Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Nat, and today it is time to do an April wrap-up, which I haven't done for March because I was busy, as I mentioned in my previous video. And you might be wondering, why am I dressed as if it's the middle of winter? And the answer is because it is freaking cold. So I would like more dedicated resource to fight climate change because this is just unreal. But anyway, I have a lot to get through because I read a lot of books in April, so let's get started. Now, to start off with, the first book that I read was Shadow and Bone because Netflix decided to come out with the show, and me and the gang did the Six of Crows review and Crooked Kingdom, so we were like, yes, we gotta do Shadow and Bone and the previous trilogy. However, two of us decided not to do it. I won't name any names, but you know, Becca Johnny. So my brother and I were left with the arduous task of reading this trilogy. I'm going to mention it briefly as a whole. There's an entire full review coming out soon with me and my brother doing like a special In Catcher's Book Club thing. But for those of you who don't know, Shadow and Bone is a trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. The premise is that there is a map maker. Let's wind it back. So there's a world, the Grisha-verse, that has a continent called Ravka, and on this continent lives a girl called Alina with her best friend Mal. They're part of the First Army, and they get recruited to cross this fold, which cuts the land in two, and the fold is made up of darkness that harbors very dangerous creatures. Now, as the story goes, they finally get into the fold, they cross, events happen, and it turns out that Alina actually has magic. She is a sun summoner, or a Grisha in other words, which are people that are able to control or manipulate elements at the smallest level, so that's why the Grisha are called Masters of the Small Science. Anyway, as she is the sun summoner, the story revolves around how her character is then perceived by everybody in Ravka. Start believing that she's a saint, she's taken to the palace, you have all those good tropes of, you know, the chosen one, and it's pretty entertaining. I definitely had enjoyed reading the series because I felt like it gave a lot of backstory for Six of Crows, which I really enjoyed, but felt that there wasn't enough world building to some extent. I'll link the videos up somewhere up here if you want to watch the reviews that we did for those. On the other hand, the things that I didn't like was actually prominent in the Six of Crows, and unfortunately it was prominent here, but I would assume that's because Bardugo just wrote the books earlier, so she was just a newer writer, and that is some really dodgy pacing. Actual proper dodgy pacing. The first book starts off very, very slow. It could be seen as a prologue book. Practically nothing happens. It's just a setup for book 2 and 3. We get to book 2. I really liked book 2. I thought that it had a lot of character building. It got introduced to this new character, Nikolai. He was charismatic and finally felt like a character like you felt in Six of Crows. The story had a very logical progression from A to B. It was just good. I liked the building of some sort of tension. There seemed to be enough of everything in that book to keep me engaged, and once book 2 ended, I was ready for book 3 because, wow, resolution. And this trilogy needed to be a trilogy because of the trifecta of items that must not be named. So it felt that book 3 needed to be something really hard, really punchy, really shows the development of the characters as they were. Instead, the book felt like it wasn't delivering properly. It was just really rushed. There was practically no character building. There was something that happened that turns out we needed for later on books, which when it happened wasn't done in a way that was hidden enough. It was just very blatantly obvious that it was either shoehorned in here or there was set up for something more, and the conclusion was a little questionable. I mean, again, I think what I struggled with is with the pacing, and it also became a bit more movie-esque, something that I didn't particularly like in Six of Crows, but it just did it worse. Overall, I'm very happy I read the trilogy because now that I've been watching the series, and I watched the series once already, and I'm now watching it with my brother as well, I can definitely say it's nice to have that background knowledge of the series, and it's gonna be great to compare Becca and Johnny, who haven't read the books, and me and Alex, who have read the books, just to see how we compare it and what we felt the series did well and what they didn't do and what it didn't do well, etc. So I think that was really cool. So how much would I rate this series? I think I rated it 3 stars for book 1, 3 stars for book 2, even though I liked book 2 more, and 2 stars for book 3. I think book 3 really fell flat on its face. It was okay. As the Goodreads 2-star rating is, it was okay for me. I wasn't blown away by it. I think Bardugo writes characters really well later on. That's why I'm quite excited to read King of Scars, because I really want to see how she deals with Nikolai later on. But yeah, Shadow and Bone, I would say you have to read it just to get background info, but it's not blow away amazing. It's okay. It's okay. So the 4th book that I read in April, or finished in April, would be Christmas at Lilac Cottage. Wow, it's April and I managed to finish this book. Hallelujah. Why did it take me so long? I'm about to get into that, but first, the summary. So we have Penny, yes, we have Penny, who lives in a little cottage in a town at the south coast of England. And she lives alone. I think she's like 32 or something, or 29, and basically young enough that all the later on comments absolutely make no sense. But she's 29, I think 29. Anyway, we'll stick with 30. Let's go. We'll stick with 30. She's 30. She lives in a small cottage on the south coast of England, and she's living her life, and she decides that she's gonna rent out her annex to this lovely couple to, you know, start socializing with people her age and somehow break out of the mold of being all and alone up on this hill. It turns out that clearly the people who rented out her place were not a couple, they were a father and son. And from the first moment, sparks fly with the dad, and she gets along with the teenage daughter, and this is basically all happening around Christmas time. That is essentially the plot. This plot is nothing more but a romance-based plot with some really convoluted twists, because the stakes aren't ever that high. All it comes down to is, you know, some misunderstandings. Henry, the guy, promises not to date Penny to his teenage daughter because of some drama that happened in the past, so he didn't want to hurt his daughter one more time and give her false hope that this is the one. Penny goes around not wanting to feel things, realizes that she keeps going on about wanting a family, but it's too late for her. She's in her she's 30, she's a spinster, everybody's already married and has kids, it's way too late for her. She's a spinster. If I didn't say that before, I'll say it again, because the book repeatedly mentions the fact that she's too old and that she isn't having a life and what have you. The thing that I did like about it, I think, is the fact that it did bring some nostalgia to me about England. I've lived in England for 2.5 years, and some of the things are just very English, you know, the high streets in a small village, going for a sausage roll, those types of things. I read them and I was like, oh, that, you know, that strokes that little part of me that misses those things. The things that I didn't like about this book were everything else. The writing, I think, was a bit simplistic. The plot didn't really have a plot. The fact that these characters were not characters but more like caricatures, and I felt this has to be for an older generation, because very often there would be mentions like, oh, the kids these days, and, you know, some kind of mention that was just really, really alienating for me, who's in the age range of the character, to be and look at it and be like, wow, okay, I definitely don't think or feel like that. The fact that at 30 you're a spinster, and wow, it felt all wrong. It felt all wrong, and I mean, on top of all of that, the relationship happened within a week. I mean, a point of contention in the book is where Penny and Henry find Daisy, the daughter, kind of like making out in this small shack at the bottom of the hill with this guy, and Henry goes into super dad mode, being like, how dare you, you know, kiss my daughter, like, enraged, you know, typical dad stereotype thing. And she's like, oh, but I love him. And they're like, you can't love him, you've only known him for a week. And then literally the next day or something, Daisy comes in to Penny and Henry getting it on, and she's like, how dare you, you've only known her for a week. And Henry's like, no, I love her, and this is definitely going to work out. And, you know, Penny and Henry for literally for 3-4 days before that going like, it's happened so fast, but this is it, this is the one. And I'm just like, oh, there's nothing, there's no tension, there's no real description, there's just nothing surrounding all of this, and it feels really, really superficial. It was in summary, it was entertainingly bad, and that's why it took me so long, because I just couldn't get myself to read it seriously. And am I happy I read it? I don't know. I mean, I did catch myself once or twice thinking, because I spent so much time in that world, like, it was from December to April, that I miss knowing that I have these characters to come back to, or this kind of convoluted story. But beyond that, I think it's mostly the English nostalgia that got me through it. And I gave it a 1 star. Or maybe a 2 star, actually. I think I might have given it a 2 star or 1 star. It's something between 1 and 2 stars, but I've really been having problems with giving books 1 stars in the past couple of months, because as you might remember previously, I gave Emergency Connection 1 star, and 1 stars are usually not something that I give to books at all, because I think as long as there was some merit or some point of entertainment, the book deserves 2 stars, because it was okay. Like, I didn't like the book really has to be something, something monumentally bad about it, or something that's unforgivable. So I do think I might have given this one 2 stars. But yeah, would I recommend it to anyone? I mean, if you have nothing else to read, then maybe. I mean, I found this for £3 for £5 at Sainsbury's like 2 Christmases ago, so this was just lying on my shelf, and I wanted something Christmassy, but you know, finished it in April. So anyway, that was my 4th book, and the 5th and the last fiction book that I read in April was Saintsville by Britanni Louise Taylor, who is a YouTuber. I followed her way back in the day, and recently decided to check out her channel just to see, you know how, I don't know if anybody else gets it, but if you've grown up with YouTube, you sometimes check back to old channels, even if you don't follow the person anymore, just to be like, oh, I wonder how they're doing. And yeah, that's basically what I did. And I found out that she released a fiction book called Saintsville, and I decided to check it out because I really decided to conduct an experiment to see if YouTubers who write fiction got the book deal because they had an actual decent book idea, or because, you know, there was the entire book publishing craze around YouTubers a couple of years ago. So yeah, I think I'm going to do something with this review, or with this book as a review, but for now, just a general overview. So Saintsville is about 2 sisters called Eve and Maggie, and they moved to a town called Saintsville because their parents are dead and they ran out of money, and now they're moving there to get some help from their aunt, who was estranged from their parents for some particular reason. They arrive and move in the next couple of days. A family moves in next door with a bunch of really handsome men, really handsome boys, essentially. But lo and behold, some creatures attack them one fateful night, and these boys save them. And they find out that there are actually mutations that feed on electricity that have existed throughout the history of humankind. And these guys are part of an organization that protects humankind from them. As technology has developed, humankind has started producing more and more of these as a result. And the cherry on top of all of that is that their parents might have something to do with the evolution of these mutations. So this is where the story starts, and it kind of follows Eve and Maggie as they start delving more into this world and figuring out what's happening and unlocking more about their past. What I liked about the book, I really liked the plot. I think the plot was the strongest point of this book, because I did not know where it was going. I thought it was simple enough that you were captured. There is a certain hook in the book that doesn't get explained in book 1, and I assume that Brittany is going to do it in book 2 or 3. and it kept you engaged enough to keep reading. Now, what I did not like, and I think that this is something that Britanni can fix 100%, but that is the writing it read like a first draft. There's no way to go around it. It read like a first draft of the book, and it was just hard to read. The point of view jumped in the chapter multiple times. So first you would be looking from Eve's point of view, then from Maggie's, then from Eve's, then from Maggie's, then all of a sudden you'd be jumping in with one of the guys' point of view, and it might even be every couple of sentences. Then the pacing was also a bit off in the sense of the plot. While interesting, it didn't feel substantiated. A lot of the decisions that were being made just didn't make sense, especially the romance subplots. It literally felt like, oh, I see him, like 2 more paragraphs, oh, he was made for me, or I'm in love, or something, and it was just like, wow, okay, that was, 0 to 100 real quick, and it didn't have to be. I think that's the thing. The book, it didn't have to be like that, because she created a compelling enough background that she could have just thrown in, them going to school for like 2 weeks before the events happened, or she could have elaborated more on the later part of the book, just them living, just letting the characters and the plot breathe, because it all read like bullet points, like this is what's supposed to happen, this is what's supposed to happen, this is what's supposed to happen, and then if an author would look back at their notes, they would be like, oh, okay, so right now I'm supposed to write this scene, and that's how the book read. In general, I enjoyed it. That's the thing, I enjoyed it, but I had to give this book 1 star purely because of how I rate books, and that the 2-star books, they were okay. Like, they were enjoyable, and the writing style was okay, but the problem with the writing style, I feel, or the writing itself, was so big in this one that even though I wanted to give it 2 stars, I would then be putting it on the same level as some other books which are so much better in writing, and I really couldn't do that. So yeah, unfortunately it was a 1 star, but I am looking forward to book 2. If Britanni decides to come out with a book 2, I would read it, just because I really think the hook that she came up with is good. I just wish that she would edit it properly a couple times. Anyway, so that's it for the fiction that I read in April, and I finished 1 nonfiction book, and that would be Beyond the Known by Andrew Rader. Now, this is a book about the history of humankind through its exploration, and I think that this is a great taster book. It really covers all of human history in like 300 pages, less. I also like the fact that the book is quite long. I like long books, and the print isn't oppressively small, which some history books or some nonfiction just likes to do. I really think that if you're interested in starting to read nonfiction, this is a great place to start, especially because it's about human history. What I would say, though, is that you can clearly tell that Rader worked at SpaceX, because the book is split into different eras of humankind, and the last one, which is to do the future and future exploration, is very, very adamant on the fact that terraforming other planets is the way to go for human exploration, and there's little to no discussion. I think there's actually no discussion about the bad aspects of that. It just seems like it's the inevitable, and I wish that there would have been a bit more debate and a more holistic view of the situation for that. And because it takes up about 1/5 of the book, it really kind of dampened the reading experience, because it was at the very end, and it also became a bit abstract and complicated, just because space is a bit abstract at the moment, but I think it could have been a bit more structured in order to guide the reader a bit, just a bit gentler into that topic, a difficult topic that people already struggle to connect with. I gave this book 4 stars, and yeah, I'm happy I read it. I got it as a present. I still need to get these markers out. I marked all the works of, I wanted to say fiction, but all the works of other works of nonfiction in this book, and there were a lot, which is something that I appreciated. Also, this was the first real test for the use of these ink blots. I'm not really sure what they're called, but I got them in the book box from the American Book Center, and yeah, they work pretty well. I was quite surprised. It's a bit of a hassle to get them on, but it really doesn't damage the pages, and it's nice to use them for referencing. So I think it was a good test for them as well. But yeah, that was my nonfiction book that I finished in April. So carry-ons. I know this video is getting quite long, but I just have a lot of books. I think, I was making up for March and the fact that The Way of Kings took up everything. But I'll start with the fiction books that I'm currently reading, and there are 3. The first one is The Chemist by Stephanie Meyer, which is borrowed from the library, and I decided I need to read all of my library books before the library opens, hopefully at the end of May. This is a thriller. I'm trying to ease myself into that genre because I don't often read, and I'm not really sure why, even though I like, the kind of problem solving that goes around real world problems. I think it might be because a lot of them are US centric, so maybe I'm going to try and find thrillers and action type books from other parts of the world, because yeah, I think it's quite formulaic when it comes to just US centric books in this genre. But anyway, in case you didn't know, Stephanie Meyer wrote the Twilight series as well as The Host. And this is a book about an ex-agent who's running for her life but gets contacted by her ex-department because they say, because it's found out that a member of the mafia, a head honcho of the mafia, wants to use a biological weapon in the United States and kill maybe even 1 million people. Basically cause a pandemic, and it kind of feels a bit, on the nose right now. But yeah, I've read this much, just to indicate, so just at the beginning, and already what I can say is that it's a bit slow. I at first it started really, really punchy, really, wow, like, this heroine is really smart, really clever, but it's right now gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, so I, pick it up, like, pick it up a bit, which, might be a bit unfair, but I do feel like it at the moment needs a little bit more plot, a little bit more meat, so I can get my teeth into it, but again, we'll see how this goes. Book 2 is A Gathering of Shadows by V. Schwab, which is the second book in a Darker Shade of Magic trilogy, which Johnny and I did a review of that. I will put a link up somewhere. And I wasn't going to buy this book because I was going to borrow the book from the library, but lo and behold, the situation, and I went to the bookstore and I saw it and I said, why not? Let's give it a go. And I'm actually happy I did. I'm actually happy that I bought the book, because while the book still has problems that I experienced with the first book, I think the plot and the world building is much more compelling in this book than it is in the previous one, and I've already read that much, and that was all today, or all in the last 2 days. I really am enjoying this, and Johnny and I are going to do an Inkcatcher's book club review for this for May, while Alex and Becca are taking a break. So this is super good. I don't have anything to say, but check out the video when it comes out, I guess. And my third nonfiction book is nothing special. I just thought I should mention it, but it is Short Stories in Dutch by Ollie Richards. I am currently studying Dutch. I decided that I need to do a bit more Dutch reading, but for learning purposes, because I've been reading children's books, but that's, I would say, more natural learning, a more natural way of learning Dutch, whereas this really pinpoints words that are most common in use and in most common situations. So yeah, I picked this up. I'm a chapter in. Nothing special to say. I mean, it doesn't really have a plot or any, like, a major plot, but so far I'm finding this quite nice, and I like the way that it's structured. I think it's a good tool, but I might review it at the end when I'm finally fluent in Dutch. Fluent enough in Dutch that I can do reviews in the language as well. And now for my nonfiction that has carried on, and that is The Secret Barrister, Stories of the Law and How It Is Broken. Now, as a lawyer and future lawyer, I got gifted this book by a friend of mine, and I really appreciate it because this is about the English legal system, except from the perspective of a barrister. So if you don't know, in England, there aren't really lawyers. There are solicitors and barristers who are both considered to be lawyers. And solicitors deal with contracts and stuff that corporations do, whereas barristers defend both individuals and corporations in court. So they're the only ones who can appear in front of a judge and jury. And this is basically an anonymous barrister's retelling of what happens in the system, because he believes that there's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to the work of the judicial system. And I would have to agree. I think that people need to know about how the justice system works, especially as we're all bound to it to some extent. However, what I would say is I think that maybe The Secret Barrister, if you ever watch this, you could write something that is the exact same content but in easier language, because this is definitely the language that we use in writing legal documentation or writing academic articles, not in day-to-day life, let's put it this way. And I feel like that might be a bit of a put-off for people who might want to get this information but just don't want to read something that reads like a semi-legal brief type of thing. But so far so good. I think that I'm going to enjoy this book just because of the content. And the fact that as a lawyer, good thing to, brush up on your knowledge and keep on top of it. So I am really happy I have this, and I'm happy that I'm going to be reading it. I've tried to go super fast through all the books because I realized that this video is already really long. It's like half an hour, maybe a bit less now that I'm gonna edit it. But yeah, that is what I read in April and what it's carrying on in May. As I said, Johnny and I are going to be doing a review for the Darker Shade of Magic Book 2, which is A Gathering of Shadows, and some other videos are planned and filmed and in the making. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and do let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you'd like a more in-depth review of any of these books, even though I'm probably gonna do one anyway. If you'd like to join my writing club, which we meet twice a week and hang out and work on our personal projects, then Discord link is in the description. Same with the book club if you'd like to join. But I know that there's plenty of book clubs out there, so just an option. But with that, yeah, I need to run because I have uni stuff to do. That has been me. I hope that you are staying nice and warm. I can't believe I'm still saying this in May. Nice and warm and safe and taking care of yourself. I'm gonna have a nice weekend, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.